Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk Trackmania. We have the dynamic trio with us once again. We're of course joined today by Turbo and Eirik Holdal, and of course your host today as always. Well, I say always, I only kind of took over a few weeks ago, but me, TM Scotsman. I'm happy to bring yet another episode. I believe it's episode 14 now. We actually reached quite a few more episodes than we've stuck to in our normal podcast at the very least, but today we are back once again. It is Tuesday. It is Let's Talk Trackmania's day. Anyway, topics we were wanting to bring up and bring to the forefront of your mind when it comes to this game was the future of the competitive scene and all of its kind of environments and all of its kind of styles. So we're talking, the traditional ones you may be more used to, such as tech, dirt, full speed, and so on. Of course, the more recent wave of mixed styles, say for example, Zerator style cups as well. As your mixed cups like the Game World Cup, and also rounding it off with a recap of this week's TMGL shenanigans, this week's TMGL step, and any sort of new information or news we have in regards to this week's and what is then going to be step 2, of course, coming at the end of this week on Sunday. But it has been another week, guys. We've had TMGL step 1 in the bag, but I hope you're both doing well, I trust.
Yes, we are doing totally fine, I would say. Well, how are you doing, Eric? You are in time. You're sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, you have now turned 1 year older, so someone told me to respect the elders, so that's why I'm here on time.
Wait, does that make me your elder then?
Both of you.
I don't want
18,
to admit to that.
I'm 18 and you guys are old.
Yeah, 18 at heart, I suppose, and probably 18 when a bit of alcohol comes into them. But anyway, got to get in a one per stream. But anyway, today, guys, of course, as I said, the main kind of theme of this of this episode is going to be competitions. It's going to be competitions which have both been happening in the past, what we might expect to be happening in the future, and what's kind of currently going on in the game of itself. But I mean, first of all, the kind of main theme of this and the kind of turning point which led me to bring this discussion to the table was the developments that have been happening within the last year or two in terms of tech. Of course, that's where I came from, essentially. I came as primarily a tech player, having dabbled my feet every, blue moon in things like full speed tournaments and things like dirt tournaments. There's, of course, other sort of environments such as Canyon has events sometimes. Valley or Laguna will occasionally have a Smurfs Cup or an MX knockout or something like that. And also we've got more niche things like, say RPG events, trial events, fun events, things like Kaki and so on. But today, I suppose, as I said, is more focused on the competitive side of things. Now, of course, we're seeing more of a kind of a mixed style being brought to the forefront of Trackmania now. We're seeing it being in NASCAR as well. Thank you, Lucillery. I did. And Fun Speed. I better not forget some of those that I have even played myself, or otherwise I'll get some angry DMs. But just to kind of start us off a little bit here to introduce you guys into this and your thoughts into this. Of course, we have clearly seen, I'd kind of use my cutoff point around about 2018 when we see the last Tech World Championship. How have you guys kind of observed the competitive scene changing? What kind of things have you guys noticed which has led to this point? As of course, way back in 2018, Tech was a predominant style. It was kind of resolutely Tech, dirt, full speed, and then, say, Zerator Cup, and everyone else was kind of doing their own thing. Whereas now, we're at a kind of completely different point, so to say. We're at a point where the main focus of cups from these orgs coming in, as I said, such as Game World or Pittsburgh Knights or, Solary coming and doing their own events, as multi-style, of course. That is the main direction of things like Trackmania Grand League as well. But Eric, has there been any sort of things you've noticed throughout the last few years? Things coming out from Nadeo or kind of community projects or anything like that that have really kind of changed the layout of the scene since 2018? How did we get to this point?
It's really easy to sum it up. 2018, we ended up with the World Championship coming back in Tech. Everybody was hyped about it being in Tech. We had probably the greatest grand final of all time, at least in a World Championship. And then in early 2019, Ubisoft and Nadeo introduced their own league, and they didn't want to focus on Tech. They wanted to focus on mixed style. They offered a big prize pool. They offered probably a good, a format for the players. the top players supported the event, and then once the best players support something, the scene changed towards it. Other players want to play against the best players, and if they want to play against the best players, now they need to play mixed maps. So it's really, to sum it up, why we ended up here. We wouldn't have been here, or at least not this fast, without the introduction of Ubisoft Nodeo, because mixed style was already a thing back when Frostbill was still around. He hosted his SEL Cup, so yeah, even he didn't even get that big of an impact on it. But once Ubisoft Nodeo actually wanted something, now we see pretty much every single event coming into it, and at least every single major event with the top players playing in it is now 90% mixed style. So, summing up, Ubisoft Nodeo is the main reason why we are here.
If I can I get your thoughts on that, Turbo, as well? As I understand, at least you weren't. I mean, Eirik was, of course, along with myself, kind of part of the tech scene, so to speak. I mean, Eirik, of course, traveling to events in 2018 when I actually first met him at Giants Cup. The first of a long line of probably best not saying, but I mean, in terms of kind of today's scene, of course, as we said, it has drastically changed even from only 2 years ago, when for such a long time it had remained a standard, so to speak. It had remained kind of an unchanged format between how the competitive scene looked. I mean, that was just the way things were. You know, tech was the most important. For example, at Gamers Assembly, you had tech tournaments getting the most prize pool, the most registrations, of course, and it has changed. But understand, of course, you're a player that's more stuck to the casual side of the game, so to speak. You've not been as deeply involved in, say, a tech scene or a dirt scene or something along these lines. How have you kind of observed the change in the strictly competitive scene from the outside, through things like Nadeo's influence, through things like even Zerator's influence, if we're kind of going in a kind of broader range here? How have you kind of felt about it, and kind of what's your opinion of it been?
Yeah, so my observation was, since I've played a lot of Zerator Cups, my observation was there that people really got interested in this kind of format, also the multi-style or the Zerator-ish style competition. So I think that this was a pretty huge impact, actually, because I played for Team Eden. We had so many scrims and wars going on, also against like multiple teams, where we had like 2 or 3 play days, and then it was in the finals. And before that wasn't the case. So I think that he actually played a really huge impact. Also, how mapping is viewed nowadays and what maps are being created, because back then we mainly had tech maps that have been created, also mini tech maps on the server, and now you can mostly see fun maps or Zerator-ish maps, LOL maps. That's like my point of view to it. And also, what is like from mixed style to tech, before that we could have seen the multi-lab things, the multi-lab competitions by Spam and Frostbill that were hosted on a weekly level, and they have become more competitive by the arguments that Eric has listed there, because Ubisoft had their fingers into that competitions.
I mean, if I can talk about, of course, the Ubisoft Nadeo influence, then there is both you guys have kind of picked up on that as being the key turning point. And I think that is, a very fair thing to say. But of course, I mean, Ubisoft Nadeo don't organise all of the tournaments in the scene. They organise, a very small amount of them, mostly being their own projects, such as aforementioned Trackmania World Championships and also Trackmania Grand League. But I mean, would you guys say to me that they have been the defining influence in this kind of change to the new kind of scene, so to speak, with the mixed styles being introduced more heavily, with people focusing more on mixed maps, players focusing more on mixed tournaments? Would you say that, as of course we do have other tournament organisers, other tournament organisers who are then kind of picking up on this kind of movement? So, I mean, would you isolate it only to Nadeo's efforts that this is kind of transformed into the style that which we see now? Or would you say it's due to the kind of community adopting the multi-style? As of course we've seen backlash from some elements of the community, such as some of the die-hard tech players some of the, at least going into the new Trackmania, of course, we've seen some dirt players being rather unhappy about it. I mean, how, at least, Eirik, if I can ask you about this, how important do you think the rest of the community coming into this kind of multi-style environment has been very important? So, I mean, early adopters, you could have seen things like the Air France Cup, you could have seen, you know, 4 Styles Cup, the endurance races by the likes of Spam, you know, G4S or Swedo, I believe it was initially, and things like I forgot the last one was, but yeah, all of these kind of multi-style tournaments coming in. Do you think they've also played quite a big part, or do you think it's only able to be isolated to Nadeo, would you say?
I think big picture is only Ubisoft Nadeo, simply because Frostbill had his Frostbills weekly before he had this Stadium Esport League. Zerator had his cup, but the top players still for 90% of the year played Tech because it was the main competitive scene. But it switched overnight once Ubisoft Nadeo announced that they will have this Trackmania Grand League. And since then, the tournament organizers, I'm being one of them, if I want to host an event now, if I want to come back into it, I will host it in mixed style, simply because there's nothing better than to have an event where the best of the best players play in it, and the best of the best players at the moment, they want to be as good as possible on mixed maps because they want to compete in the biggest league, that being Trackmania Grand League. So they see other tournaments as maybe a training to actually get more skills into becoming a better contender at Trackmania Grand League, and then PKR, Air France Cup, all of these cup that is coming up now benefit from that. If they're hosting in Tech, maybe they would play it like they did from Zero to Hero. But I think it's better for tournament organizers to simply just focus about what is the main thing at the moment in Trackmania, because Trackmania community is such a small thing, and you can you can agree or disagree about the move away from Tech, but I think mixed style has come, and again, it's Ubisoft and Nadeo's reason for it, and then we can go into an argument about why Ubisoft and Nadeo actually picked mixed style, but we wouldn't be here without Ubisoft and Nadeo. That's, at least in my eyes, 100% for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think we can kind of both agree in that kind of sense. I mean, me personally, I think it has been a very interesting move, and it's also been, I suppose, we've always had kind of, you know, parties being against the direction for Nadeo. I mean, we look back to the days of Expert, when a lot of their team members were angry that the Expert leadership weren't getting a lot of feedback from Nadeo, so it resulted in Expert ending up dropping out because they felt like there was no plans ahead. They felt like there was there was going to be less and less worth for a kind of organization of their structure going forward. So there's always been arguments between, you know, players and whatever direction the game is then taking, of course. But I mean, if like now, I would say, especially having the transition to Trackmania Grand League has been, I think, the most the transition from the tech style to the multi-style has been the most divisive issue we've seen, at least in recent times. I mean, at least as far as I've been in the scene, and we're talking 5 years now. It makes me feel old, but I mean, looking at this side of things, Turbo, I mean, tell us how you feel about the scale of this issue, about the change, because of course it's not necessarily just meant that, you know, say tech players now don't have their showcase event. It's also affected, say, dirt players or full speed players maybe feeling like the top tournaments are now more accessible to them. But could you give us a little bit more of how you feel the impact of the change into mixed style has been across the board, do you think?
I think that people had to adapt to this certain play style. And of course, this is not easy to do it from scratch. And people, of course, complained about that. But I think that Ubisoft Nadeo started this one with a sort of experiment. But so from my perception, also from casting, I've seen that players actually have adapted to that one pretty well. So I would say, and rip Eric, of course, I would say that this worked out pretty good from my point of view. Because for me, I talk good from my point of view now, because I would say I'm a more of an RPG player, or when it comes to that, and I'm not that strong on tech. And I would say that it was easier for me to kind of get the gist from those mixed map compared to a tech map. So to summarize it a bit, or to give my opinion about that, it is now more accessible for a casual player to access or to train for those events, because those tech competitions were so stacked, and it was almost impossible for a casual player to participate in those kind of events.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I suppose I kind of look at it upon me getting a bit of the shitty end of the stick, as in by the point I was starting to get decent in tech, it's like bye-bye tech tournament, you know, see ya. But it's important to then look as exactly what the main word you're saying there is accessibility. I mean, if I look at it through my own journey into Trackmania, I would then be spending, I think to this point, I've spent probably a few thousand hours in terms of, you know, competitive Trackmania, you know, in terms of training, in terms of playing matches over the course of, you know, 4 to 5 years. So, like, even at that point, you do have, I mean, I like to think I was one of the players who developed a little bit quicker. I was quite a quick riser through Trackmania. I was always ascending through, you know, like, say, from the second team in a new era to the first team, then moving to M&M and so on. So, I mean, even me being a fast riser only then felt like I was good enough to compete even for, you know, top 24, top 32 at some big events after 3 years of solid training. So we're talking, you know, 2018, 2019 for me. Whereas nowadays, well, at least if we look at the tech example, first of all, of course, it's not very accessible because you need to put many years worth of training in to get, you know, specific techniques down, to perfect your timing, to perfect your ability to, you know, traverse these maps at you know, a very, you know, for very fast times and very consistently. But now, for example, if there's a tech section on a mixed map, it has a far smaller impact. As in, if you're 0.1 slower than an amazing tech player through this section, you can make it up by being better or being more well-rounded, where there is no such thing as being well-rounded in tech. You can be very fast, you can be very consistent, you can of course be fast and consistent, but of course that does not then translate to you being very fast and consistent on dirt or very fast and consistent on full speed. I mean, we have some players who are, you know, phenoms in both styles, of course. Players like Papu, players like, you know, Dan from Numalops now, I believe. But the point now is that players who have, you know, been the kind of people who would just join a public server, play whatever maps were going to be there, so a variation of speed maps, dirt maps, tech map, players who have just been playing more casually, as you've said, now have, as I said, now are a bit more well-rounded and finding it a little bit easier to maybe compete at a better level in things like this. But of course, with the Trackmania Grand League influence, you know, pushing forward such a kind of mixed map agenda and things like that, I mean, if I can just kind of ask the question to this, I mean, this has kind of been defined by Nadeo's choice, as we've kind of agreed upon. Nadeo has chosen to go down the mixed route, so to speak. They've chosen to, you know, set the blazing standard that they're wishing to follow. They're wishing for everyone else to follow. Now, just if I can kind of put our thinking caps on for a second, so to speak, if I can start with you, Eric. If we look at the future, do you imagine that they will stick with such a format like this? Do you imagine that they'll maybe try to refine it into maybe a more specific style, for example? What do you imagine the future is for the Trackmania competitive style of mixed maps to be?
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about Ubisoft and Dale having by far the biggest impact and by far being the main reason why you're here. So the future lies in the hands of Ubisoft and Dale. If Ubisoft and Dale suddenly wants to be like a softy B, like the Trackmania World Championship back in 2018, he wants to go back to tech. I think Ubisoft and Dale can go back to tech, and then the best players are forced to go back to tech, and then the community will follow after. But if you are to ask me for my prediction, I think the prediction is going to be that eventually we maybe get more and more polished mixed maps. So maybe less of these identities, maybe more so if Serator eventually stops after his cup in 2021, because then you don't have this reminder every year for Ubisoft and Dale that Zerator hosts a show with his maps, he gets a good amount of viewers, and then they think that if we do the same, then we can bring in the same audience to it. So I think in the future there will just be like in tech that year after year the maps seem to be more polished, seem to be more suitable for a competitive level. But that took 10 years to eventually go from, let's say, the tracks we saw at ESWC in 2006, ESWC 2008, to eventually the tracks we saw at the World Championship in 2018. So some would not even say that that was the same style, but other people would say that it's just a different era of tech. So I think we are now into the new era of mixed maps. The players would progress, the maps will progress. So I think the future is going to be fun. So I was against the move in the start, and I think I'm still somewhat against the move in the way they did it. But now I'm really fine with mixed maps being the main thing, and I don't have a problem about the future being in mixed style.
Yeah, so I think that the future will be in mixed style as well, since like TMGL, for example, is a mixed environment. And I can see many more mixed competitions. I mean, I also organized one coming out of nowhere, and then people are just hosting them. But on the other hand, we had competitions like From Zero to Hero just before the game release coming out. So that we have a lot of still tech competitions still around this game. I'm not sure if this will be still be in the new game. I hope so, at least, because I don't want to see tech go full extinct. I hope that there will be some competitions, but only that it's something special. You know, it's getting announced, and then 1 month later there is the competition, and not like you say Zerator Cup is every year. Hopefully it is in 2022 as well. But I hope that there will be some sort of tech competition still, and players can perform like Novice, who I don't see in a OGL/TMGL competition that much, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, players who are kind of limited to their own style, so to speak. I mean, we have certainly seen players who have made transitions into the mixed style very successfully. I mean, even from different environments. I mean, your prime example would be Papu, of course, renowned as one of the greatest art players of all time, alongside, you know, a very, very limited number of names, of course, and now is one of the best multi-style, or regarded as one of the best Trackmania Grand League players in the league currently at the moment. But I mean, in terms of Zerators, I understand you mentioned them quite a bit there, Turbo. Just to kind of also draw us back a little bit there, how important, if at all, would you say Zerator's influence has then been on any changes we've seen in the Trackmania scene? Would you attribute him to having an impact at all on, say, Nadil wanting to go for a more multi-style kind of, you know, identity-driven tournament? Would you say he had an impact at all on that?
I mean, I would not say that he had a huge impact on the mapping itself, but he had a huge impact of bringing new players to the game. There are so many French people who are that good. I mean, if you look into the OGL, like Glass Stoffelt, for example, those players, I think they actually started playing the Zerator Cup. So he definitely brought really like new people into the game that are right now playing on a good level, because they started way back in 2016, 17, something like that, and they try hard at the game. And also Zerator Cups or Zerator maps gives you a very good like understanding of how the car will behave, so you maybe can transfer the skill that you have gained on the track or the knowledge, I would say like that, onto the Trackmania Grand League or the mixed style maps.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I can just ask in regards to the Zerator kind of movement as well, I mean, we talk about in terms of Zerator's influence in terms of the cup itself, but also an important part to then bring into that is the fact that Zerator has brung, you know, many players into the game, many players who have then, you know, started playing the game because of Zerator's influence, because of him hosting these cups. Now, of course, these players then come into this game, they look forward to the Zerator Cups, they came in for the Zerator Cups, they're practicing the Zerator Cups. Now, we've all seen these maps, some of I don't know if you've played them, Eric, but definitely me and Turbo have of course played the Zerator maps. We know what they're like, we know what to expect, We know they're challenging. We know the kind of ins and outs of them, so to speak. We know the style it's trying to represent, essentially its own style, but we know how to identify that. Now, the very clear thing about that is it's completely different from what was the status quo, which was, regimented technical maps in the main tournaments, or, specific technical dirt maps, or very intricate full speed maps or something like that. So it's a little bit of black and white, of course. It's a completely different style of game that you're trying to play from Zerator Cups compared to your traditional Trackmania tournaments. Now, having so many players then coming into the game that are thriving upon this Zerator Cup, would you say, I mean, not necessarily that Zerator himself have an impact, as in, he's been whispering in the ear of Hillis or something like that. Would you say then maybe that the surge of new players who are then interested in a different thing to a normal competitive style has maybe been more of a driving point between any Zerator influence to the change of the competitive styles at all? Or are you kind of in the camp that you don't really think the kind of Zerator movement, if I'll just classify it as that, has had much impact?
So I mentioned that Ubisoft and is by far the biggest reason why we are here today, but then you need to understand why. What?
You said that like 3 times, but it's true, But
yeah. But
yeah,
now I'm going to go into the point. So
Sorry.
Ubisoft and is the biggest reason why we are here today, right? But the reason why Ubisoft and made the move they did is simply because of Zerator. Without Zerator having hosted his event, I don't think we will ever had Trackmania Grand League. I don't ever think Ubisoft and would have implemented something, and then we will still be in 2020 playing tech maps. The reason why Trackmania Grand League is implemented is because Ubisoft and wants to try to catch this fan base and these numbers that Score brings up. And then I think it's a better way to do it if maps are then created more as a show compared to what the tech turns or tech maps looks like with just turn after turn compared, at least in the words of Softy and in the words of Hillis. So I asked Hillis about it, and Hillis said that Zerator is a direct reason why they want to host the event they do. They want to have the viewers that Zerator brings in, and to be honest, it's stupid not to. So in some way I understand why they do what they do, because they want to target their event to be somewhat competitive platform, but also a way of bringing in the Zerator fans in an easy way into the competitive scene. So the main reason why we are here today is Ubisoft and the main reason why Ubisoft and made the move they did is Zerator. So Zerator himself has a big influence, not by him saying to Hillis, hey, create something else, because I don't think Zerator really cares about what else goes into the scene, but Hillis cares about Zerator, so that is why we are here, and Ubisoft and cares about the numbers Zerator brings. So sort of the extra line there, and the reason why Ubisoft and made the move, at least in my eyes, and from the from the interviews I did with Softy B and Hillis and all of them. I mean, I only done 2 interviews with Ubisoft and I was like, I'm gonna list up all of them, and I was like, just 2. So I guess I need to fix that soon.
But yeah, I definitely agree with that, actually, because way back in 2018, let's say, I played TTCs and I was not really good on tech, but then the Trackmania Grand League beta step was announced, and this directly caught my interest. I mean, it was like 1 week of an announcement, and then there was the event. But if I would have been available there, I would have played. And I was a Zerator player, or like a Zerator-ish style player, mini LOL, whatever player back then, and those definitely suited me well. So they really tried to introduce this to the competitive level. So I just agree with you there, Eric. Just wanted to add that from my point of view.
Thank you.
Some support. I like that. Some brotherly support.
Yeah.
But of course, we're casting together now, so he needs to be friends with me, right? Else I don't show up on Sunday, and I'm gonna go ham on the whiskey bottle on Saturdays.
Oh, please, not again.
What, don't show up on Sunday again?
2 guys throwing me under the bus here. Come on. I'm trying to look professional.
Yeah, I know. Well, I suppose in this podcast, I'm not really got much of a hope of anyone looking professional with a spider killer and the 2 most useless people in the scene. But anyway, I mean, one of the kind of parts of this I wanted to kind of bring up a little bit is we're kind of talking a little bit about how, of course, as I said, the Zerator movement has influenced heavily how the style has changed. I mean, the style changing through Nadal being influenced, through so many people then coming into this game and being used to and wanting to play something kind of completely different. I mean, a lot of people have then kind of theorized that, if it was a tech tournament done, that it would be tech and it would still be tech and all the rest of that. But that's not really what's important in a sense, I would say, because it's like talking about a decision that was never made, But one of the points I would actually like to discuss with you guys, and it has actually been quite a point of contention when we've seen in discussions made publicly, and also through one of the things I was going to bring up when we talk about the specific styles, the army of twitlongers you saw at some point around about 2018, early 2019. But one of the points I wanted to bring up is what's Trackmania Grand League's, what I personally classify it as well, is instead of it being a competition, I classify it more as being a showcase. It's, as I say, it's more of a show. It's been, put in more crude terms, like it feels like more of a circus performance kind of thing. From I think it was Danik B was saying he felt like a circus performer in some of these events. But Trackmania Grand League is aimed to be more entertaining. Now, that's arguments that have been put forward for things like the point system. The point system is it's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be entertaining. It's supposed to keep your eyes glued to the screen for the full step instead of just map 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. Of course, the identities being very difficult, sometimes inconsistent, or sometimes having little nuances that some of the players just simply are not able to do properly. It's for entertainment purposes. It's not meant to be an out-and-out competition to 100%. It's not 100% meant to be skill-based. Now, I understand that sounds strange, as of course in these type of tournaments it is 99% of the time the best player is always going to win. But I mean, if I can kind of ask you guys a little bit about the change from it being essentially competitive tournaments that it was always before. So Trackmania Pro League seasons 1, 2, and 3 were all out and out competitions. It wasn't any messy point systems, fancy maps, or anything like that. It was even the same with a lot of the World Championships they organised, TMWC itself. But now in the transition to Trackmania Grand League, not only have they changed the mapping style to be, as I said, more of a mixed style, but they've also changed their focus on tournaments to being more of a showcase instead. I suppose a showcase just in and of itself, instead of being a through and through competition, as it were, in years previous. Now, what do you guys think about the kind of change from competition to show, so to speak? Do you guys identify that much of a difference, or how do you guys feel about the fact that it's now more focused upon trying to draw viewers in than trying to deliver a properly competitive experience? If I don't know if any of you want to start off on
that. Yeah, I mean, we could have seen that they added a lot of things that yeah, I mean, of course, the point loss at this part, it is all about, as you said, about the what did Danik B say again? What was that?
He felt like a circus performer when he was playing on some of these maps.
Like a circus performer. And also the price pool I want to mention here, it is not high compared to other games. And I mean, the first step had 50,000 viewers. I mean, Eric can maybe give us the exact number. Maybe it's a little bit more, a little bit less. I don't know. But I mean, that's a lot of exposure, and a lot of people are watching that. And they really try to make the maps as entertaining as possible, and also with those sort of identities where a player can fully break apart on the sixth map and loses 80 points. So it is definitely in some cases not fair, and brought into the more non-casual and non-professional direction.
So the argument, I just want to say about the prize pool itself, and I agree totally about the overall situation in Trackmania at the moment by not having a great prize pool. But Trackmania Grand League, the reason why I felt that Trackmania Grand League was a good move, and finally Ubisoft and they were coming in, was because once they announced it, it was like 20,000 euros, if I recall correctly, and that is the biggest prize pool we've ever seen in Trackmania 2 Stadium. So it's still small, but compared to what the other players has played at, I mean, Mania Planet World Cup had like 5K or something. So the prize pool itself is better, but still a long way to go. But now I forget what Scotty was asking me about. I was just focused about being in a stare contest with Turbo, not answering the question. So what was the question?
The question was just about how it's been more focused not to be a show more than an out-and-out competition.
If a show is what, let's say if you need 5 years where it's just a show, or more a show than a competition instead of more competition than a show, then and the result from that is that now we get more players and more viewers and simply a better sort of, a better state of the game overall, more relevant in the overall esport world, then I would be fine with it. So I think it's fine to actually do this move, and maybe not agree with every single recent move, like the playoff system that we have talked about for last episode or 2 episodes ago, the implementation of the point loss system. So there are things that could be undone simply, and still have a show factor to it, simply because the maps are maybe more suitable for a casual fan, at least according to Ubisoft and them themselves. So if we need to have a show to get more fans into it, I think that's a good move, because if Trackmania focused or continued in this tech state and just was pleasing the hardcore community but didn't get any new people into it, then yeah, eventually people would just leave, because then it stays a hobby. But we never know how the tech format would look like if Ubisoft and then all of these orgs that is coming into Trackmania now would have pooled behind the tech system, because we never saw that. So I don't really know, but I'm fine with having a show factor. I'm not going to play it, so I don't like to go to circus, but I mean, sure, I can watch them.
Yeah, I remember one of my favourite Eric quotes was when we were at the zoo, and he says the only caged animals I want to see are UFC fighters. So no circuses and no zoos.
I didn't go to the zoo. I didn't go to the zoo.
I was
too
hungover.
But anyway, I mean, one of the things I just wanted one of the things I just wanted to ask you about that, Eric, was, of course, you're fine with the show factor, although it has kind of changed the landscape a little bit. Now that we're kind of getting over the hump of we're at the kind of first 6 months, first 1 year, when you are going to be getting a lot of interest and a lot of viewers in the game. When you continually keep doing the same thing, you're not going to be able to gain as much interest on it when you're not changing it up. So do you imagine that it's going to continue in the breath that is, as in it's going to continue to keep being a show? Or do you think that it is going to kind of try and go back to its roots and, say, be a bit more serious? Of course, we've seen things like was it Trackmania World Cup that they announced when they brought out the rule book or something like that? Is this something that you feel might be within the future of Trackmania Grand League, that once they're confident they've got the viewers that they're going to get, that they're then going to transition to more of a kind of competitive kind of style?
Yeah, that was. I was thinking that before you asked the question. Once you was saying it, was like, exactly. We are talking too much together. We don't need the two of us here. Eventually, we just think the same. But that is, I think, now we see that move from Ubisoft and Deo, that now Trackmania Grand League is maybe falling into the place that it's now going to be more of a show than the place or the platform where the best of the best compete against each other. Now they may be able to have the Trackmania World Cup every year, that they are going to look at the most important. And then if you build on from that, if you have other tournaments being a result of then new people coming into the game, but Trackmania Grand League still being here and still being a recruitment platform by having 16 different orgs, by having Sardosh casting it, by essentially just pulling in numbers, then I think overall the scene will evolve naturally towards what they did in tech, not necessarily the tech maps itself, but how the tech style overall progressed with the maps then being more and more suitable, to be more and more aimed to actually crown the best player, and to be less random, less having this skill. Then you had bugs as well. So just if this natural progression, everything that is progression will naturally progress towards a platform that is fair and square, and I think Trackmania Grand League is at the moment not there, but maybe never claimed to be and never will be. But hopefully other tournaments will come as a result of the hopeful growth in Trackmania, and then hopefully that will be the place where we have the most prestigious battles.
Yeah, so I kind of thought it like that the Trackmania Grand League right now and also the playoffs itself are a little bit more of a show, and then we have the Trackmania World Cup, which looks from the format itself, I think it's a double elimination, or do we know yet? I don't know, but I think that this will be the competitive thing, or it will focus more on the competitive thing than rather being a show or anything like that. So that's my assumption. We will find out, and also they are still experimenting, so maybe there will be some changes to season 3.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of bring us, I suppose, at least onto our next topic in a bit, but just to kind of round off, which I thought was a kind of important point to consider when we're talking about is how the game is moving forward, but also to look at what it's then leaving behind. Now, of course, we talk a lot about the transition to mixed styles and things like that, but of course, with the transition to mixed styles means, of course, tech being the previous main style is now put on the back burner. And this means, of course, with things like, I would say perhaps maybe Dirt was the second most popular one, or whichever order they would have been. They've now had essentially one more style above them in the pecking order now. I mean, Dirt's not going to see any World Championships being organised by Nadeo, and certainly, Canyon isn't going to see anything like that. You guys know what I mean. But what I would kind of like to pick your brains about, guys, is we've seen, once this was all announced in Trackmania Grand League, we saw a wave of retirement from a lot of, well, of course, older tech players, a lot of through and through traditional tech players. We've seen a wave of Twitlongers that I was mentioning about earlier, but people extremely unhappy, refusing to play things like Trackmania Grand League. And as I said, we've seen people being very vocally unhappy with it, and this hasn't changed for these people who have stuck to what they were doing, say tech, Dirt, full speed, so on. They haven't necessarily seemingly changed their minds. It just seems to be a lot of people are now kind of fading into the background. Now, what I was noticing, as I said, that was going to be my original catalyst for this discussion was that a lot of, at least the most recent ones I've seen, was the ALM Cup admins saying that they were possibly not going to host another edition of their tech tournament again. The Trackmania Masters guys now saying that their admin team is dropping out, so they're going to need new admins, or else their tournaments are not going to continue. So if I'm right in saying that's True Talent Cup and Trackmania Masters Team Cup. And things that have always had kind of leadership turmoils, like the Trackmania Stars, or formerly ESL admin team, was frequently changing. However, seems to have a bit more of a stable team. PTC's last edition gained a lot of criticism, and as such, does not seem to be coming back. And also, of course, the most recent showcase event, so to speak, from Zero to Hero, was essentially the last gasp of the group of old, I would say the group of old E-Corp team, like Mass, Omnipots, Papu, and some others helping behind the scenes. Forgive me for not mentioning you guys, but a lot of these kind of admin teams are on their way out. They're already out, or only some of them are holding strong for things like tech. Do you guys imagine that, if, of course, as you guys feel that the mixed style is going to continue to be the way forward, it's not just a flash in a plan, it's not just a 1-2 year plan, and then we might just go back to tech, then do you imagine this is a kind of end of the road for things like tech, for things like Dirt, full speed, anything like that? How do you see the future for these type of styles, or other things like Canyon tournaments and things like that? What do you guys think is going to be the in the next few years for traditional Trackmania competition?
So what I think is, I mean, you all experienced it. You stopped Trackmania for 6 months or so, and then you came back. You are coming back, and I think that it will be the same kind of, because you can never stop playing this game. And I think with that, tech tournaments, even with the old organizers, even if they say it's the last tournament, they will come back. I don't think that they will come back back in that kind of magnitude or anything like that, that there will be like another 2,000 euro tech tournament. I don't know, but I don't think that this is the end of the road. We will still see some tech tournaments, especially that there's the new game coming out now, or maybe it's an issue for them as well. I'm not sure about that. But on the other hand, you can see like new organizers rather organizing mixed style competitions, Zerator-ish competitions, or anything like that. So it's like it's going to that, but I don't think that this tech bar here will drop to 0. I don't think so. So I don't think that this is the end of the road.
Yeah, as long as there is people here, there will be competitions here, and I think maybe the TMM admins are also in the state of their life where other things are more important than Trackmania, and I mention this pretty much every episode that is going to be a case for most of the Trackmania community, myself included, that sometimes you need to think about how much time do you want to spend on a hobby. That is, if you look at it from let's say from their perspective, it's just going to be a hobby. It's not like, I don't think being an admin for the Team Cup in Trackmania Masters is going to make you a millionaire, or hosting TTCs every Thursday is going to make you a millionaire. So it all comes to a point where you yourself need to question, how much time do I want to spend on a hobby? Do I want to be one of the main forces bringing this game forward, or should I maybe be in the background and maybe enjoy it? So I think maybe what Turbo said is correct, that most of the people will never leave Trackmania. Some of them will probably leave for good, but some people will always have a relationship to Trackmania, but maybe more on a casual level, because life is coming up, more important things are coming up, and I think that is the case for the tech scene overall. That you mentioned, most of them are old, like myself. I'm old, but they're actually older, so that's just a statement to how old they are. So yeah, I think they will never die. I think we've seen Valley hosting events. We have seen some dedicated people like Hux hosting events there. So there will always be someone that loves the style itself, and then they will do what they can to bring it forward. We see Fullspin now maybe growing up or having a little peak with Nathan himself being in there. He has brought some life back into it. So the Fullspin scene is just an example about how much impact one guy or one org can have. So I don't think it's the end of the road, but it's not going to be the main style until Ubisoft Deo decides it to be the main style.
I mean, we talk about how it's like not just of course talking about tech, but a lot of people felt like some of the tournaments, say for example, the dirt scene was dying a little bit through, I think we're talking 2017, if I remember correctly, before the PDC, I think it was at the time, admin team kind of came in and breathed some life into the game. I guess some feelings were pretty similar for the likes of the full speed scene before a lot of, different organizers came in. As I said, people brought a kind of fresh set of eyes to the tournament scene, again, breathed some life into it. Tech, however, I'm not really seeing that at the moment. We've not got a lot of kind of fresh tournaments being started. So I guess there's going to be a little bit of a question mark over what I think is the next step for tech. I don't think it's quite going to go full hobbyist in the sense that you're not going to be able to get anything for playing tech, in the sense of, say like the old TMNF scrims were going on or something like that, where you were just playing it because you wanted to play the game kind of thing. But I'd certainly agree with you guys in the sense that it's not going to be the future of Trackmania, but that doesn't then mean to say it does not have a future in Trackmania. So I think that's at least the most important part in that. But from talking about what kind of tournaments there has been and is then going to be, of course, as we did mention at the start of our episode, one of our other topics was going to be the event that is currently going on at the moment. And of course, the two men alongside me did combine to, of course, recently announced to be part of the M&M broadcast team, not part of it, but they are now the M&M broadcast team for Trackmania Grand League. First of all, congratulations, guys. I'm very happy that you guys are getting the opportunity to cast it. And how did you guys feel about Step 1 that was, of course, played only 2 days ago?
Yeah, go for it. You can start, and then I'm just gonna hop into that.
Damn, the caster lets the co-caster go first. I mean, whoa, the pecking order has changed. But yeah, I mean, it was, like I mentioned once we started the cast, that it's finally good to have a Sunday where you just have the best of the best players playing against each other. You can have a break from the reality of Trackmania at the moment, because if I'm being honest, the reality of Trackmania now and the last month has not been great. It has been numbers that has gone down. It has then come out to open letter, some drama there, and then it's just peaked with accusations towards Hillis. So it was nice to just have something to only focus about the competition once again, and it certainly lived up to my expectations, and I think it will just continue to do so. So I'm happy what we got on Sunday, and I'm happy that I got to cast it, but also happy that I got to update it on Twitter. So I tried to do both of them, but I think maybe in the future I should just focus about one of them, and that is probably going to be cast, at least for this season.
Yeah, so the first step for me casting it was a bit messy because we had so many things going on. But on the other hand, it was really cool to see that, yeah, like Eric said, a competition is back, Trackmania Grand League, and it's so enjoyable to watch and also to cast it, to bring you guys a good cast. And also to see the surprises, because I did not expect that Papu will go home with 92 points or that Carl Jr. will lose the points, for example. So now we have everything on the wire now, and we will see how the top 8 will develop over the next 5 steps. And I'm happy to, yeah, I'm really looking forward for every Sunday from now, because it's like you're really getting excited. You think like, oh, okay, it's Thursday already. For example, I thought like that last week. I mean, of course, my birthday was on Sunday as well, but I was so hyped for this Trackmania Grand League step, and it is good that this is coming back, and I'm really getting excited for it, or I'm excited for it. Let's say it like that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And with Trackmania Grand League coming back, I mean, you could close your eyes to any sort of things that happen on Twitch or any sort of events that happen. You know, when Trackmania Grand League's back, when you see when you see the Discord lighting up and the feedback sections with with complaints about point systems and this guy lost points, it's bullshit, and all the rest of that. All these suggestions, I check out the general channel and I'm like 250 plus messages, even though
Really?
I read it like 2 days ago or something like that. Yeah, it's fucking
Jesus.
bananas. But I mean, that's when you know Trackmania Grand League's back. But I mean, Eric, Turbo mentioned a little few things that kind of surprised him coming out of this. I mean, of course, we did see some little new things like, the spectator shoutings, which always seem to be Bren for some reason. But also the people, the spectators or something like that you could drive through. I found that a bit bizarre. But I mean, of course, those little kind of niche changes, I suppose, aren't really that much to talk about. But did anything about this week's events surprise you at all?
Yes, because I expected Gwen to do really well. Gwen didn't. Gwen didn't seem. What did you say? What?
We know.
Yeah, okay. Hashtag Team Gwen. But yeah, expecting him to do well. But also, like Turbo mentioned, that Carl Jr. So maybe those two that maybe are the key players to battle it out for the title now maybe are not the key players anymore. But it's step one. Let's not draw any fast conclusions. But I'm just happy that Kappa showcased how this point system can be used and abused with actually just training the last map. Or I don't know if he actually just trained the last map, but it really made a testimony to how unfair or how unbalanced this can be, with Kappa winning the last map and then Aurel sadly not losing a lot of points. So, or sadly not losing a lot of points, sadly losing a lot of points. So, yeah, I guess that is a key takeaway from it, at least for now. So, not any surprises beside my boy Gwen and Carl Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we did see quite a few surprising results there. I mean, both by players who had performed consistently throughout the whole step, players like Aurel getting a lot of points damage, Carl Jr. having a lot of points damage and things like that. But also players maybe not performing to expectations. You're mentioning there Gwen. I'd also kind of bring up two other names. Tween also, who had a shocking performance, it must be said, out with, I think, maybe 1 or 2 maps where he managed to perform, reasonably within the top 8. And also one I was quite surprised by, at least going into it, but not as much after I heard a little bit more about him, was actually Scrappy. Now, Scrappy did finish with a decent amount of points, I believe 30 points in 4th or something like that. But if I remember correctly, for the first 3 or 4 maps, he was making a lot of mistakes. He was quite far down the order. And to me, that wasn't the Scrappy I was used to seeing from, 2nd place at the previous edition, and being a very strong contender throughout a lot of the steps. It was very surprising for me to see. But there was also quite a bit of kind of controversy before it being brought up by everyone's favourite Trackmania source of controversy besides Hillis, Milmy, saying that he was noting that a lot of players were seemingly not putting in as much effort as either he was expecting, or as even they were wanting to put in themselves. Noting that such players had opted to focus on things like khaki, or had simply just not had the motivation to put as much hours into the event itself. I mean, did you guys get that feeling at all? Either, I mean, if I can start off with you a little bit, I think we discussed this a little bit previously, but we've spoken about or seen players who have been, putting in a lot of hours in training, and who have been very well prepared in it showing off, or even them still struggling. But also players who have, I guess, seemingly been a bit distracted, or seemingly not had as much time. And we've seen what kind of impact that can have. I mean, look at Pack from last season compared to Pack this season. Of course, he was on the verge of taking home a massive points haul before losing it all in the last map, I believe it was. And I think that was 51 points or something like that, went down the toilet. But what impression have you got from the players after step 1, Eirik? Because some don't seem to have all of the priorities on Trackmania Grand League, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I did interviews with 13 out of 16, and the 3 I didn't interview is called Junior, Gwen, and Bren, for those who missed it. And I mentioned that those disappointed me. So I mean, maybe karma, like I said in the cast, that if you do like Papu, if you step up and do interviews with me, you're eventually going to get 92 points. But Scrappy is maybe the reason why Milmy posted this in the first place, that Scrappy said that the last month he simply just maybe practiced a half an hour of the maps. He grinded it a lot once he was out, but after that, he simply didn't have any motivation to do it, maybe even less so with the new sort of movement towards it just being more and more for show. So I understand the players maybe that they don't really want to focus that much on it, but I also understand the point of view that you want the best players to take the best or biggest event seriously, because you want to see the best players being as good as they can, so we don't end up with this excuse that is sort of used in pretty much every major event, that instead of praising the guy who won it, you are sort of excusing yourself by saying, yeah, I didn't train enough, yeah, I didn't have enough motivation. Well, it's up to you to have motivation, it's up to you to have time. So I just feel like why not just praise the guys who is doing well? And it's never bad to admit that someone is better than you, but maybe there is something else. Maybe there is something else in the heads of these players, that they want to maybe create an excuse. They maybe want to put them on themselves towards, instead of putting it, put it on instead of saying that someone else is better. A good example is like both of you and me, Scotty, at least follow MMA. Like John Jones, who is the best of all time, once he was at his peak in the early entrances, he partied the week before every fight, because he knew that if he loses then towards someone, he can say that, okay, I lost because I didn't prepare enough, not because the other guy prepared more than me and is better than me. And I think that is also the case here, at least from what I've seen the last years of covering it, that people use this excuse of not being motivated. But there might be a relevant, or not relevant, there might be some truth behind the words of them actually not being as motivated. And I don't know the main reason for it, if it's getting burned out of playing Trackmania for so many years, or if Trackmania doesn't have this grind level. Some of the players have said in the past that there is a point when you train the maps too much, that eventually if you put an hour into it, you're just going to get burned out instead of getting better on the track. So I guess that is also something to it, that the maps was out for so long, and then how can you be motivated for so long? I never trained the maps for 6 weeks, so I had no idea. I'm done after 6 minutes, so I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to bring up this point, which I noted down just now, because the maps were coming out 6 weeks before, or even more or less,
Yeah.
I don't know, plus minus 1 week. And I just note from the Rachel Cup myself, so I give you the player POV. I tryharded for 2019 super hard, and you can overplay maps and you can get burned out by them. And I think a bit or a huge factor here is that practicing together was not a real thing. I mean, they could play against Ghost, they could set up their own server, but I mean, when I watched in TM2, I've seen like Spam on his stream practicing with 3 or 4 of the TMGL players, and this is a huge factor to not practice alone, but to practice with other players. And yeah, maybe they also think that the competition is now more stacked, since the player field, the top 16, gets more polished every time and more or better. So those are like my kind of argument points. But yeah, in the end of the day, I mean, maybe there are some excuses, maybe there are some personal things going on. We don't know. I don't want to accuse anyone here, but I mean, in the end of the day, you're playing for an organization. It's kind of your job to perform in this. That's what they're paying for you then. And maybe you can use Trackmania as well for a kind of like to just switch your head off and just try to perform there. That's what I was using it for when I didn't feel that well, to just practice for a competition to like get onto another point. But that's just my opinion about that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if I can kind of have a little bit about that. I mean, the situation's changed a lot from what it was a few years ago, when you saw people mostly going to tournaments to try and perform in tournaments for the sake of competitiveness. Like Eirik, we often talked a lot about how you had players like Kappa who would go to the very best events and compete out against the very best people because he wanted to compete. You know, he wanted to play against the best. He wanted to perform very well. And it does seem in a sense that some people aren't as interested in that. Some people are maybe more interested in simply staying in Trackmania Grand League, you know, simply picking up a few points so they'll get into the playoffs or something like that. But I mean, I would also say that the situation that a lot of these players are under is drastically different to what it used to be, even a few years ago. I mean, it might not be common knowledge, but at least to, oh, well, Eirik's gone again. That's number 2 of the day, I believe. But I mean, at least when we look at this, kind of word you use, Turbo, which I think is very important here, is job. Now, I don't think that applies to a very large amount of people within the Trackmania Grand League kind of realm, so to speak. But one of the more important things here is people in Trackmania Grand League are getting paid a significant amount of money from their organizations. And we're talking at least 4 people, to my knowledge, are on 4 figures a month, or more. I mean, give or take however many, you know, some of the very, very top guys might be on, but at least 4 people are on €1,000 a year or more, as I said.
A month, yeah.
A month, I don't know why I keep saying a year. Some people are very close to being 1,000 a month, yeah. Some people are very close to being that, you know, upwards of 500. Some people are, you know, around about the 500 mark. These people are getting paid a lot of money for what essentially is 1 tournament per year. So, of course, I mean, Trackmania Grand League is now supposed to have 2 editions at the very least. So, one kind of winter, one summer, you know, that kind of swing, so to speak. Also, I mean, some of these players might play Zerator Cup. They don't play tech tournaments anymore, you know, other than maybe like 2 or 3 of them or something like that. They mostly just kind of play what is enjoyable for them, so to speak. Some of them, for the likes of Spam, can essentially, Realo and such, they can then make Trackmania their job through the money they get from sponsors and through they get from them streams. Now, seeing then players who are making a significant amount of money, putting in less effort than when they were not making a significant amount of money, does kind of draw me into looking at the situation and then seeing, like, what more do you want? You know, what do you then what needs to happen for this player to then put in a lot more effort. I mean, because we can talk about things like, you know, personal circumstance or things like that. But one of the things that always used to frustrate me and when I was in tech and specifically when I was a team leader is one phrase that was used a lot, which was one of the most kind of false phrases I've ever heard, was that I've not got enough time. Now, to give you guys a kind of insight into what I mean by that, so say I'm asking someone, can you train one map for this upcoming, this match, on Sunday or whatever? I would ask them, and then they'd say to me, they've not got enough time. Now, what that would then transpire to is they would then have a job, they would then have university, they would then have studying to do. But what that really meant is the free time they had, they didn't want to spend playing Trackmania. It's not that they didn't have any free time. It's not that they had no time. It's that the free time they had, they didn't want to spend playing Trackmania. So I mean, don't get me wrong, there is going to be that very, very minute amount of people that work or study from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to sleep, with whatever breaks they take during the day. But let's be honest, that's not going to be a lot of people. So I don't accept the excuse from people who are in these situations then saying that they don't have time to train. We have seen some of these players coming out for major tournaments and saying, well, it might, of course, be a mind game, but they don't train a lot for these type of tournaments and still having world-class performances, and then coming to another tournament and also saying they don't play a lot and then playing dog shit. It's like 2 and 2 is adding up to 5 here. It's not adding up the way it should. And that's something that kind of frustrates me about this situation, as we're talking about a lot of people who are essentially getting everything they can ask for from Trackmania. They've got an organization who's providing them a lot of social exposure. They're in a situation where they can grow their other platforms, things like Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and they're getting paid a lot of money from their sponsors. And we're not talking about, say £50 a month or £100 a month. We're talking, as I said, people over 500 a month. I mean, that's a lot of money to some people. That's a lot of money to a lot of people. So what I would then say to you guys, do you kind of see this being, do you kind of tar Trackmania Grand League with the brush and look at it in the sense that it's not as prestigious or it's not as important because you are having these players who, through whatever means, are just not as interested in competing and competing in Trackmania Grand League? I mean, although that was kind of my rant for the episode, so to speak, but I mean, you guys will have seen it as much as I would have, and some players simply, they're riding on a paycheck, and that's a really, really harsh way to say it, and of course I'm sure those guys will understand that I'm using that as a kind of turn of phrase to illustrate the point I'm trying to get across there. But I mean, when you look at a football player, so to speak, who doesn't look like they're putting in a lot of effort, but they're staying on the team, they're just they're bench warmers, so to speak. They're collecting a paycheck and then they're just going to check out when their contract's done. That's what other people from the outside will look at what these Trackmania players are doing. When you're hearing about players like Scrappy then coming and saying, he was watching PUBG for maps 1 through to 3 instead of concentrating on the game, or he's only spent half an hour a day on these last maps. And I'm not specifically looking to pick on Scrappy, as there's a lot of other players in the league who, I mean, we looked at Pac last year. Me and Eric would have almost a weekly discussion about why is Pac not performing well. We clearly know he's capable of it. And then you look at other players throughout this season who we know are capable of top 2s, map wins, top 3s, top 4s, but are languishing in the bottom 8 of the points and not even competitive. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? I'll not kind of ask that in any specific question, just in terms of how do you guys feel about that kind of aspect that's really kind of been brung out, I would say, within this season, or, kind of the end of last season. I mean, Eric, how do you feel about that, at least? Am I just kind of getting overworked up about it like I normally do? Or do you think it is actually an issue, so to speak?
Sure. It can be an issue that the best players don't train as much as they want, because you want a platform to sort of... What we want is to crown the best player in a fair and square way, and then we need to at least feel that all of the players are prepared to what they can do, because if you say after an event that, yeah, he won because I didn't train enough, then that disvalues the whole event, that disvalues the performance, that devalues who actually won it. But I think, again, I don't... the players that are playing in Trackmania Grand League are now playing Trackmania for so many years that maybe they are not as motivated as they was maybe once they were coming up. And most of the people that are watching these guys now are maybe coming up and they was like, damn, I would die for having a salary like that. I think if you ask these players back in 2013, 2014, they would also say that. And then they actually trained probably the living shit out of the Trackmania maps. They no-left it. They have been through that time already. So the generation of Trackmania players that we see now in Trackmania Grand League are people that are coming to an end of their career. They're maybe, instead of trying to progress and try to get to the next level of their own career, they're maybe just trying to stay on the same level because maybe they don't have as much room, or maybe they don't have much room to eventually improve because they maybe have peaked, or to go to the next level, they don't have enough motivation to do that. We are seeing now that Papu, who actually puts hell of a lot of time into it, he is getting the results from it. He has now become, over the last 2 years, one of the main contenders, not only at Trackmania Cup, but also at Zerator Cup. So if you put time and effort into it, it shows that over time you will just progress and progress. And that is something we're going to see, that eventually the players that are, like you said, maybe having an attitude of a bench warmer, they will essentially get switched out. So if they want to have a payday, then I guess they can have a payday for a season or two. But in the end, the skill gap is eventually going to catch up to them, even though they have such a big advantage. But I think once we come into, or maybe now, not always the excuse I have once we start off an event, maybe in a bad way, is that the playoffs is coming up. Once the grand final is coming up, then we know that players are taking it serious. But I don't know if they are going to do it now with the playoffs that is coming up. But sure, it can. I think Soft to be, if he hears people being outspokenly about not being motivated and not having time, he will try at least to find a way out of it, or try to find a way to put the player out of it, because the players that didn't have enough time or motivation last season, they're not in this season anymore.
Mm-hmm. Now, I suppose that's a good way to look at it. Just one kind of point I wanted to bring into that just before we bring you in there, Turbo, is like, of course, we look at it in a sense where the bench warmers, people who are just kind of riding by, collecting a paycheck, would get replaced. But the problem, I think, with that idea is that only 2 people from Trackmania Grand League will get eliminated per season. And it's by no means a guarantee saying that will then be the 2 players who are, part of the Trackmania Grand League, who are not putting in a lot of effort. As we've seen, a massive difference in, well, maybe not a massive difference, but we see a noticeable difference in the level of training that players were putting in last season for the remainder of the actual main season to the Combine, because the Combine was when their place in the season was actually in threat. As, of course, if they want to keep coasting on a paycheck, all they need to do is put an effort in the Combine and not finish bottom 2. That's why one of the things I thought was very important about the argument about the Combine is I thought it needed to be more dangerous for players like this, for players who are just coasting by, picking up money, but essentially being irrelevant to the overall result. They're not putting in enough effort, they're not as motivated. In my opinion, those sort of players should be having a lot more room for punishment, so to speak. And I don't mean that in a necessarily sense that they're bad people or anything like that, but people who aren't wanting to put 100% into your marquee tournament of your game, you really want to be replacing them with people who have the fire to compete, because you're going to get more worth out of that. I mean, you're going to get more years of a performance out of someone who's has that kind of fire to compete. Say someone like Granadi, who is, firing through every sort of mixed tournament you can think of, some you have heard of, some you haven't heard of. And he's, 19 years old now or something like that? Not quite reached his peak. He's certainly got a lot to go. I mean, if you stick someone like that in Trackmania Grand League, give him a few €100 a month, and you're going to see an inhuman effort out of him, compared to someone who will take 2-3 times that amount of money, but yet is only training a much smaller amount per week, isn't playing in any sort of other tournaments. The only time they're really putting in effort is to kind of keep themselves comfortable, so to speak, as I said, for something like the Combine. But in general, I mean, if I can just even suggest a solution to that, I think that there needs to be a much more lethal Combine. There needs to be a lot more danger in the league to light a fire under the ass of the people who just simply don't care as much about winning it to put in a lot of effort. We need to give these guys another reason to put effort into the tournament, because clearly throwing money at them isn't enough. You know, if these guys want to remain at the top level in Trackmania, they're going to have to put more effort in. That's the way I see it. You reward people who will put the most effort in, and at the moment, I don't really see that happen, to be honest. But I mean, what's your thoughts on it, Turbo?
Yeah, I also wanted to. I've written down this point. Not in danger of losing their spots, and this is exactly what maybe some people are doing. We've seen that, last on season 1 as well, where Pac had to do a lot of things in his life. He was just very busy, and then he just performed in this Combine match and dominated it with Gwen and Afi, and he was not in danger at all of losing his spot. And I think that this is a point that has to be changed, because, as you've said, people are more motivated than someone else. Maybe there are some other things. Maybe they will step up, because I think that you only need one good step in order to go through. We speculated about that, Eric and me, that Papu is almost through already, because he's now sitting at 90 plus points, and this is a very hard gap to clear for other players. So maybe they will put in the practice on step 5 and 6 or anything. We will see that. But yeah, making it more dangerous is definitely the way to go here. To say that the bottom 2, you suggested that, I think, from the TMGL is definitely out, and they they will be replaced. But maybe on the other hand, people are practicing less, that they have less pressure, because if you practice a lot, you know that you have to win, or you have this mindset, and you think, oh, I'm now under pressure. Maybe some people can't cope with that well, but others can do it better than maybe, I don't know, Scrappy can maybe not do it, and Papu can do it. I don't know it, but maybe they don't need that much practice. I don't know how they are thinking about that, why they are not practicing it. Only some speculations, and also the point of what you say and what you do is also something different. I can also say, if I perform well, I only practice for like 2 minutes or so, but no one will believe me that, But you don't know what the player exactly is doing and what is going through their minds.
I mean, Eirik, talking about, of course, the issues that were then, I suppose we could be identifying through Trackmania Grand League. Has it kind of changed your expectations at all as to what to expect for the remainder of the season from any of these players? Or, are you expecting some people to put in, extra performances or anything like that through the next step? Or give us a kind of rundown on how you're feeling for step 2.
No, because the overall feeling I have of these players are that they are actually prepared. So maybe that Scrappy mentioned that he didn't train enough because he had put so much hours into it before. Now I heard for the first time that you said he watched PUBG on the first 3 maps. I guess that's just Scrappy things. But in the end,
I don't think so as well.
Yeah, he could have. I don't want to question that. But in the end, he showed that he is a world-class player. So with the training he has in the bottom, I think if he is a player that can just train 30 minutes a day to keep that sharp, and then maybe the 2 days before go back to training more than 1 hour, 2 hours on it, I'm fine with it, because I didn't notice him being that unprepared on the Trackmania Grand League step itself. Maybe it's hard to cope who is actually unprepared. Besides, I would mention Tween and Bren. Bren being on vacation until the day before. Tween, I had not heard why, but those are actually the 2 only players that felt that wasn't there to compete. So I'm looking forward to step 2. I think the best players are the best players, even if you put in, let's say, someone upcoming player and give them a salary that they will not even imagine. I think Scrappy on half of that is still gonna beat the shit out of them because the skill level is sadly, but also it's good that we have. It's sadly that high, but it's good that we have these players in Trackmania Growling, and let's just hope that they get more and more motivated because now it's just 1 week, and now we don't have a time to not train. You train or you're not going to perform. So hopefully that will motivate them, that they have this pressure on their shoulders of, oh damn, I actually have to train today because step is coming up. So it's not going to be. It's like myself once I was studying for exams. It was like, oh damn, it's 3 months until the exam. Who cares? Let's read a book now and then forget about it for 2.5 months, and then like, damn, what's the exam? But once you have the exam period going on, then you are in the momentum of just doing it and doing it and doing it. And I think that will continue in Trackmania Growling. Now they're in the zone, unless they are falling behind and being like last season, that once they realize they don't have a chance of being top 8, then you're going to see players not caring. So hopefully all players will eventually have a chance of qualifying to the top 8, because then all of them are going to train.
Mm-hmm. Turbo, what's your kind of thoughts for how Step 2 is going to play out?
So I'm really interested to see how Brent, Tween, and Aurel, so P14, 15, and 16, that's super weird, right? That I say that, how they will perform versus Evon, who in my opinion performed super well, and also Afi and all the other people. And if someone can actually contest Papu, because he looked so dominant. He was like 4 seconds ahead of the first place on one map. And this is just,
no?
Yeah, something like that. Just a ridiculous amount of seconds ahead of the second place. And we are talking about, like all the pros being in here. And what I hope for Step 2, that we will see like some players will accumulate or gather points, and that we will have a throughout like very interesting season, that even P14, for example, can make it into the playoffs, because in season 1 it was always like that we had on Step 6, we already knew who our top 8 was. So I hope that this will not be the case this time, and that this will be interesting in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly I'm looking forward to Step 2 as well, although it does look to be that I'll be resigned to being as a viewer capacity, but as I said, who knows, we'll see. But I mean, was there any other things you guys wanted to mention about TMGL or any of the other topic we mentioned earlier?
So far, not now.
I'll take that. Yeah, I was about to say, is that going to be another stare down I'm going to have to deal with? But yeah, I mean, that's been pretty much it from us here today, guys. I mean, same as usual, of course. Just let us know. I haven't had as many questions in the chat to be filling in at the very least. But I mean, let us know if you've got any topics you guys wish for us to discuss at the very least in our episodes. Of course, either we'll make it up as we go along as to what topics we're going to cover, or we'll take some community suggestions or anything like that. You know where to find us, guys. Our social links are on the page, of course. You can find us on Twitter, Discord, and at least for myself and Turbo on Twitch, and Eirik, of course, for any of his projects on YouTube as well. But of course, for us, guys, it is going to be toodles for today. We are going to be right here once again next week on Tuesday at the same time, and of course, the same place as I say every week, and hopefully joined by these two lovelies, who are also going to be casting Eminem's perspective, or at least for Eminem, throughout the remainder of Trackmania Grand League. And since we're on the topic of TMGL, guys, where can they find your cast for this season? As of course, since you're a part of this podcast, that's who we're going to be supporting.
I'm going to send in the link. So we are hosting the cast on the official Eminem Gaming channel. It is called Eminem Gaming UK, so you can follow that. And then you also see when we are live. But Eric and me are also posting it on our Discords when we are live, and you can see it on our social media. I'm also hosting with my channel there. But yeah, that's where the action is going to be. And I'm really hyped for Sunday. I just have to say that. Really happy about that.
I'm looking forward to watching both of you guys once again on Sunday. I mean, you guys know that's a place I'm going to be going if I'm going to be watching it. I can't miss out on you two. But anyway, guys, that has been it from us for another week. This has been episode 14, if my memory serves me correctly. Hopefully it does. Otherwise, that's pretty embarrassing. But I hope all of you have a wonderful Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of the week. Let us know what you think about Trackmania Grand League Step 2 or anything we've discussed in today's episode. As I said, we'll look to see you guys next week, but for now, enjoy the rest of your night.
Goodbye.